And everybody else, good morning. Good
Yeah.
morning to the pride of Hampton County. Hey, Alex.
Good morning. How y'all doing this morning?
We're living the dream. Can't you tell? This is the
Always.
dream right here, Alex. You see all this? This is what you get right here. This is the
Yeah.
dream. That's what I tell my wife. Look at all that. Look at all, look at all
It's
this
all
every
yours.
day. You, like many of us, or well, I say us, we just get to talk about it and go sit in the press box from time to time. But you, like many in your field, are pulling double and triple duty right now. You still got to cover football, you got to cover basketball, and you got to cover Gamecock baseball and softball. How about that? Ashley and the girls are undefeated. But tonight, the men will make the trip to Columbia, Missouri, and they will try to win their second game in the SEC. Missouri is a 12.5-point favorite in this game. So obviously Vegas is expecting somewhat of a blowout here. But Alex, look, you go back to Saturday, and they shot 419 free throws, and they made like 330 of them or something like that. But Lamont said after the game, hey, look, we're off the schneid. We're going to celebrate. We're going to feel good about ourselves, and maybe this will kind of reset these guys and mentally, basically, I'm paraphrasing here, essentially, hey, calm down. You finally broke through. Fresh start. Missouri is really good, and this is where South Carolina was last year at this point in time. Remember that? We were all going, wow, would you look at this? And this year, after a quick turnaround, the Tigers are going to be well into the postseason, seeded very highly. They are coming off of a 92-85 loss on the road in Arkansas, and the Hogs really needed that, and Coach Cal. So, what do you think we get out of them tonight?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, what their mindset is going into the game. Obviously, getting that win on Saturday for South Carolina, I think just kind of allows them to refocus and kind of maybe get some of the tension off. Just because, having that one win, you can say now you're not going to go over for the season. I think that's going to play a key part just because you can relax the team a little bit. Now I think now they can just kind of have the mindset of let's see what we can do down the stretch to end this season and see if we can end it maybe the right way. Obviously it's not going to end up being the season that you wanted, but just find a way to build off of that win on Saturday. And there are a lot of good things you can look at in that game on Saturday that they did. Defensively, they played really well in that first half. And then really in that second half, Trey Johnson just kind of got going. And he scored 20 points for Texas and really kind of was the difference that maybe get Texas a little bit closer in that game. But you mentioned it at the top. 34, 45 free throws. Like, that's really, really good. Jamari Thomas, he was one, and obviously Colin Murray-Bowles had 22 and 10, but Jamari Thomas was 1 of 7 from the field, but finished with 15 points because he went 12. He went 12 of 13 from the free throw line. So, he only had 8 turnovers. South Carolina as a team only had 8 turnovers in that game, which has been a problem. So, a lot to build on in that game. But, when you look at this one, you mentioned it, Missouri's really, really good. They've had a great bounce back season after what they did last year. And, I think, one thing, Missouri's been really good at home. I think they've only lost 1 game so far this year, and South Carolina's had some struggles here on the road. So, it's going to be an interesting matchup tonight.
Yeah, they have not played well at all away from the house. That's for sure. It's a 9 o'clock tip for anybody wondering. Yep, you got that right. 9 o'clock. Kevin Fitzgerald and John Sunvol will have it on ESPNU. Of course, Derek and Casey will be on the air at 8:30 on the Gamecock Sports Network and on the Gamecocks app. I encourage all of you to download that. Yeah, so look here. Colin Murray-Boyles probably would have had over 20 shots in the game had he not fouled out. To be honest, you could. They were going to feed him late. But he did foul out. SEC officiating at its finest. You haven't heard a ton of that this week around here because Carolina won the game by 15 points, but it was pretty terrible. Let's just be honest, right? But there's some thing so let's talk about Colin for a second here, man, because there's a side of the argument to be made that he is like most, an NBA player, but maybe not ready for the NBA. There's a lot of guys that go in the first round, if that makes sense, right? Hey, this is an NBA guy, but he's not ready. There's only a handful of them that really ever get in there and just shine right through from the get-go. And he is an NBA player. But then there's a section of people, I'm not just talking about fans, scouts, and all kinds of people who go, he might be able to use another year. and continue to develop some of his game. But Alex, I saw some neat things from him the other night. Right? He took a couple of mid-range jumpers and knocked him down. Looked very confident. He's always crashed the boards. He's always been really good around the rim, but expanding his game out a little bit. I'm not a basketball expert. I'm just kind of regurgitating here. Expanding his game out from the basket a little bit is something that I think people wanted to see more. He's knocked down a few threes this year, and he's capable of doing that. Maybe not as consistently as some would like to see at that level, but he can do it. So how about the development of Colin Murray Boyles and when he's playing very confidently, what that means for this team?
Yeah, I think recently the biggest thing you've seen with Colin Murray Bowles is he's being more aggressive as a scorer. And I think, Lamont Paris and the staff have asked him to do that a little bit more because there are times he can be a little bit, too unselfish, which is not a bad thing. He's always looking to help his teammates, always looking for the open man on the perimeter or in the paint. And so, that's a good, product to have is when he's unselfish. But at times this year, he's need to be more aggressive to attack the basket. And you've seen that here recently, then you really saw that against Texas. And, he was driving the lane. He would find mismatches and drive the lane. And he's so good around the basket, finishing around the basket. He's so good around there. And he showed that again on Saturday night. And you kind of mentioned there's a little bit of some mid-range stuff that we saw with Colin Murray Bowles. And, obviously, the big thing from an NBA perspective is you wonder, just what they think. You heard Perry Clark talk about it, I think, actually on the broadcast for the LSU game about how, scouts can still think the 3-point shot will come with him. And this year we've seen it a little bit. He's made a few, but, he maybe just, as you mentioned, hasn't been as consistent. But, he continues. He's just been the leader of this team. And, I thought he was just really aggressive against Texas. And they've been asking him to do that. And you're starting to see that. And they're going to need that down the stretch, especially starting tonight.
Yeah, back-to-back double-doubles for CMB. How about that? 38 points and 20 rebounds total in the last two ball games. But, he can't win every game by himself. He's played great in a bunch of games this year that they lost, as we all well know. Now, 34 of their 84 points the other night came from the free throw line. That is a ton. As you pointed out, Jamari, Jacoby combined 2 of 13 from the floor. Those two starters are – it is what it is, I guess, but they need to hit more shots. But coming off the bench, you saw kind of a return of Morris Ugasuk, who was 3 for 3 from long range. So they got to have somebody when everybody's – the focus is going to be tonight. Everybody does. They're going to be focused on CMB, clearly. But somebody's got to be able to knock down open shots. Alex kind of changes from game to game as to who's capable of doing that.
Yeah, that is the key for South Carolina. We obviously, you mentioned, we know what Colin Murray Bowles is going to give this team, but they still need some more from the perimeter. And if Morris Ugasuk can go 3 for 3 in every game and give you 10 points, that's a start. He's shown throughout the season for the most part that he can knock down the shots. And those 3 threes really came at a pretty crucial time there in the second half when Texas was trying to make a run back into it, but he knocked down, I think it was back-to-back possessions on one and really kind of pushed South Carolina's lead. So he's one that really needs to continue doing what he's doing. And if he can give you 2 threes, 3 threes, 10 points a game, you'll absolutely take that. And you just still need to see a little bit more from, the rest of the guys. Nick Pringle gave you 9 and 6 the other night, was 4 or 6 from the field. Zach Davis gives you 12 as well. So if you can find ways for that to happen while Colin Murray Bowles is continuing to do what he's doing, South Carolina can see what they can do here down the stretch.
All right. How about the defense? That was greatly missing from this team. It was like 6 straight games where opponents shot basically 50% or better from the floor. It was pretty bad, right? Now, you mentioned Trey Johnson went off the other night, but he was the only one who really did any damage for the Longhorns, and they shot just 40% from the floor. What was going on?
Yeah, it was really that first half defense from South Carolina. In the first half, Texas shot 29% from the field and 16% from 3, and Trey Johnson had 9 of those points. So, I thought first half they did really well. And the big thing with this team recently was the 3-point defense just had been a big struggle. These teams recently had been knocking down 3-pointers, and you think about that Florida game and really that LSU game, that's how they got so much separation from South Carolina was the 3-point shot. And they did really well in this game against Texas when, they finished the game 5 of 16 from 3. And it kind of like we both mentioned here, the game really couldn't have been that close if Trey Johnson didn't go off for 20 points in the second half. And credit to him, and he's one of the best freshmen in the country and is going to be a really good player. And so he kind of kept Texas within reach. By the end of the day, South Carolina didn't let another player get into double figures. I mean, they had Kaluma had 9 and Shedrick had 8. So, I mean, it was really one of South Carolina's better defensive performances here recently. But, going into the night, I mean, Missouri's got a team that they can shoot the 3 ball really well. I mean, they got guys like Caleb Grill, who's averaging 13.4 points per game, but he's currently sitting number 12 in the country at 43.3% shooting from 3. Tamar Bates, we all saw him last year. He was kind of the leader of that team, and he's been really good again this year at 13.3, and he's at 40.9%, while also hitting 93.2% from the free throw line. So this team, this Missouri team tonight, they can really shoot the ball and really score. So it's going to be another test for this South Carolina defense.
Yeah, they shot 60% against Alabama just a couple of games ago, who was basically the number 1 or number 2 team in the country at the time. They're still obviously ranked in the top 5. The Tigers shoot 48.3% overall to back up Alex's numbers there. 9 of the last 11 games that Missouri has played in, they have scored 81 or more points. That includes 110 against the Crimson Tide. They just got beat at Arkansas because they weren't playing defense. Arkansas hung 92 on them, but they put 85 up on the scoreboard. So defensively, South Carolina has got to show up and play very well tonight to just stay in the ball game.
Yeah.
What's the goal here, Alex? Clearly, there's no, right now there's no tournament unless you win the conference tournament. You can't go to the postseason or anything like that. And you can't win anything in the league. I mean, you're either playing for pride or, as I've been saying for the last couple of days, you're just playing and hoping to get hot at the right time. So, what have you learned about Lamont Paris and the message to his team?
I think it's just continue to play hard. I mean, this team really never showed any quit throughout the season, and they really could have easily done that with the way the season was going and some of the losses that they had. But I think you kind of want to see them rewarded for that for continuing to play hard. And you saw that against Texas, and obviously tonight's going to be tough. But South Carolina has some opportunities down the stretch, especially at home when you have Arkansas coming in, who's kind of been up and down this season under Calipari, and then Georgia, who's coming in, who's really kind of struggling here recently. I mean, they seem like they were kind of safely in the tournament, NCAA tournament picture, middle of the season. Now that they're really starting to struggle, and that's going to be a team that needs a win. But I mean, Georgia's just really struggled. So there's some opportunities for South Carolina to find some success down the way. But I think tonight you just want to see them be competitive because recently on the road has not been anything about Florida and LSU. Those games really got away from them, especially in the second half. And I think tonight you just want to see them be competitive and find a way to build off of what they did on Saturday.
13 teams as of today. Today, the newest bracketology out by Joe Lenardi. 13 are in from the SEC. Now, 3 of them two are definitely hanging on by the skin of their teeth. Oklahoma and Arkansas are 2 of the last 4 in, according to Lenardi. The Longhorns are one of the last 4 buys in the tournament right now. Of course, they're coming off of the loss here in Columbia against the Gamecocks. Georgia is on the next 4 out line. Next 4 out, not first 4 out. Next 4 out, Alex. And they've got Florida tonight. The Mike White game. The Gators are vying for a number 1 overall seed, as we all well know. So they'll be in Athens tonight. I'm sure that the folks in Georgia will be very loud for a lot of reasons. One, to get into the tournament. If they can upset the Gators, obviously that's going to go a long way for them. And then clearly the Mike White situation. Florida, of course, playing to be one of the top overall seeds. After that, the Dogs hit the road for Austin before coming to Columbia, and then they've got Vanderbilt. Again, they're on the outside looking in, and they've got just 4 wins in the league right now. So they probably need to win 3 of these last 4, I would think, to get into the dance, right?
I'd absolutely think so. And if you can find a way to beat Florida tonight, that's a huge boost to the resume with what Florida has done this year. But I mean, going on the road to Texas is not going to be easy because Texas is, kind of in the same way with Georgia. Like they've kind of struggled here, but in need wins. Just need to continue to rack up wins. So Texas is going to be fired up for that game. And then you come to South Carolina, who's been at least has been really good at home from a standpoint of that, just completely different team, home and away. I mean, Georgia, that game against Georgia and South Carolina, it was competitive for a little while, but Georgia was just a little bit too much at Stegman a few weeks ago. But, South Carolina, we've seen what they've been able to do at home. And, I think when kind of one point with the Texas game was South Carolina played really well and played just about as well as it did against those teams like Auburn and Florida, but it wasn't an Auburn and Florida that they were playing. The Texas was a completely different team. And, Auburn and Florida maybe had a little bit just too much for South Carolina there at the end. But, Texas, South Carolina played just as well as they did against those teams, and you saw what happened. So South Carolina's playing pretty good basketball at home for the most part. So that's going to be a tough one for Georgia. And coming into that Florida game tonight in a 4-game losing streak with 4 to go, that's going to be a key game for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, no doubt. And I didn't necessarily tee you up on this so we could educate our audience on Georgia basketball or anything like that. But what I'm trying to do here is build the picture that South Carolina right now can play spoiler.
Yeah.
For a couple of teams. The Dogs obviously are one. Missouri is safely in the tournament. Gamecocks aren't going to knock them out or anything like that. But Arkansas, as I mentioned, is one of the last 4 in alongside Oklahoma. Just like Georgia, the Razorbacks are coming to the CLA next week, right? So Arkansas tomorrow night has the Texas Longhorns. Woo, boy. Number one, we know they don't like each other. Number two, Texas is barely in, and Arkansas is barely in, and that loss is going to hurt somebody, and it's going to help somebody, clearly. And Coach Cal has had a rough time over the years at the CLA, hadn't he, Alex? So when the Hogs come to town, it's another opportunity for the Gamecocks to maybe kind of upend somebody and hurt their season. And we'll see, depending on how Texas finishes, that South Carolina loss could end up factoring heavily into what happens with the Longhorns as well. So, again, what I'm getting at here is we get into March, there could be a handful of teams whose their postseason outlook has been greatly impacted by a Gamecock basketball program that's just playing better.
Yeah, and who knows what happens when you get to the SEC tournament as well. I mean, South Carolina could find a way. Right. Obviously, they're going to be in that first game or the first day, but South Carolina could find a way to, find some success here down the stretch. They can maybe, play spoiler there down the stretch as well in the SEC tournament. And that's one thing with the tournament this year is especially what we've been talking about with the bubble picture. Like it's going to be a really fascinating tournament just because of what you have on the top end with Florida, Auburn, all those teams. It's going to be competitive. But then there's going to be a lot of teams fighting on the bubble too. And right now, when you kind of look at the bubble, I think it's a little weak this year. So I think that may actually help the SEC in some regard, from the bottom up, trying to get some of those teams in.
Not to get off topic here, but you know how Paul Maneri has introduced salute to service Sundays at Founders Park? Well, now Bakich and Clemson has his guys going up into the stands to shake the hands of veterans. Can those guys do anything on their own, or do they have to follow the leader everywhere they go?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, what are we doing?
I mean, that's, yeah. I was actually at the game on Sunday, and that was the first Sunday game I've been to. That's pretty cool little tradition that South Carolina started. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, well, Clemson, now they're going to send their players up into the stands to go shake the hands of veterans. They can't do there's one area that they, for whatever reason, can't follow South Carolina in baseball. That's called national championships. All right, hadn't got there yet.
Struggling there a little bit.
Yeah,
it's taking them a while.
What do you think about that series this weekend, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be it's going to have a national spotlight on it this weekend, and it's going to be interesting. Pitching, South Carolina's pitching staff has been really good, as we all know, and that's going to need to continue against a Clemson lineup that's been pretty good. I think the key is going to be what happens with the pitching staff. Obviously, you had the Dylan Eskew, strained muscle, sounds like maybe he goes back into that Sunday game. Do they move Matthew Baker up? And obviously we'll see kind of how the rotation shakes out. But, I think pitching staff is going to be key in for South Carolina. And then offensively just continue to kind of build on what it did in that Milwaukee series. I think you started to see the bat starting to come live. And not that they really had a slow start. They just had a lot of hard hit balls that, found gloves of the opponents, or, in some cases, ball just got up in the air in that cold weather and just wasn't traveling. But you see a lot of positive signs with the South Carolina's offense, and they're going to need to keep that going this weekend.
Yeah, on the other side of the break, I've got the aptly named. You won't believe this, Alex. I thought long and hard about this. This really took a lot of time. Phil and I, we did a bunch of research. We tried to figure out what would flow, not be a tongue twister, and we came up with Bradford's Baseball Bulletin. I mean, isn't that something? Everybody, look at me, right? Yeah, exactly, right. How self-serving is that? So, but we do this. We'll do this every Tuesday. Give you some kind of behind-the-scenes numbers that most people don't pay attention to, and things like that. So you might want to check in on that. You can write a column off of it, Alex. Don't tell JC or Whittle I told you that. I'm not going to give Whittle the good stuff. We'll give it to you.
There you go. I'm gonna have it planned and ready to go.
Okay, all right. The Running Rebels tonight of Gardner Webb are in town. The first pitch at Ray Tanner Field is set for 6:30, and Cade Crenshaw and Stuart Lake. Does Derek ever work? What the hell is wrong with? Oh yeah, he's calling a basketball game. Okay. Yeah. So they'll be on the air at 6:30. Of course, you can watch it on TV with Dave Weinstein and Grayson Griner. Grayson's coming up at noon today on our program, so looking forward to getting him in as well. Alex, we'll let you run. On that note, great stuff as always. A tip of the cap to Hampton County.
Awesome. Always good being on with you guys. Appreciate you. See you
All right,
next
buddy.
time.
Thanks, Alex. There you go. Alex Jones.